Welcome back to layout number 3 of the Skylark collection. The Skylark collection is a Bring Back Your Pack collection that is a special that is running until the end of January. And we have been working through the 3 layouts that are part of the workshop and making some changes to those layouts as we've gone through. So we finished 1 and 2 already, and we are working on number 3. Number 3 is, again, another layout that I am going to adjust and change a little bit. It's not a bad layout. None of these are bad layouts. They're just not necessarily to my aesthetic or the way that I like to handle or work with my pictures or my layout styles. And this one, again, is another one that kind of falls into that category, similar to layout number 2. The thing I struggle with is actually on the right-hand side with the limeade paper, the stencil, and then the Lagoon pattern paper and the sticker that's sitting on top of it. It just, for me, it just doesn't work for my aesthetic. And so I am going to make a slight change. I'm not going to use the limeade as the background paper for this, or use limeade on this stenciled the way it is. What I'm choosing to do is I'm going to just stencil directly on the white daisy. I'm going to lay out the rest of the pieces, and I might end up adding the grid patterned paper over on the left-hand side a little bit more. I'm going to just sort of see how it plays out as I'm working through this. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to do the stenciling so that I could show that to you. The rest of this goes together pretty quickly. I'll show you how to stamp the stamp set here with the heart on it, and we'll do some assembly, but a lot of this is really going to be the stenciling and then the layout. All right, so I'm going to move that off to the side, and what I have done here is I've gotten out 2 pieces of white daisy cardstock, and I have measured, and I've just done this based off of the cutting directions that were part of the workshop. So we had 2 strips on the left-hand side that were each 3 inches long, or 3 inches wide by 12 inches long. And so what I did is I just took my T-square ruler and I measured out 3 inches from the left, and I measured in 3 inches from the right. On this piece, it has stencil across the top. You only need to stencil the top 4.5 and go all the way from left to right. And so what I did is I measured down 4.5, and then I just took our green tape and I laid it across so that when I stencil, I will keep within those boundaries because I don't want to go outside. Otherwise, it might look a little funny. So we'll move this piece off to the side, and we're just going to bring in our centerpiece. Now, the stencil, even though the stencil is a 12 by 12 stencil, and it is a little bit hard to see, but it is a 12 by 12 stencil, but there is a gap here at the top and along the sides. And so in order to make this look uniform or straight, you're going to have to move the stencil. And so you're going to start, and I kept my green tape a little bit long on purpose so that I could anchor it down onto my mat so that I can try and keep my paper stable. And then I'm going to take some more green tape, and in this case I am going to anchor my stencil so it doesn't move because I have a much larger area that I am stenciling compared to my previous layouts where I was just doing a little small area and I could really anchor it just with my hands. But for this, because I am going to have this big area, I have the potential of moving this stencil accidentally. So I'm going to take, again, some green tape. I'm going to anchor that down on the sides so that this stencil does not move. I'm going to get my blending brush and my ink out again, and I'm going to get my my paper to blot off on. And we're just going to work our way down this stencil. And I'm going to, again, do the same thing. I'm going to load up my brush. I'm going to tap it off. And then I'm going to work my way down with a circular motion. I'm going to start off light, making sure I get coverage at the top, all the way to the top. Reload my brush, tap it off. Again, I want to make sure that I'm coming and getting up to that green tape. And again, just trying to hit some highlights and some lowlights so that you've got some dimension on some of these leaves and flowers. I'm going to go in and reloading my brush as much as I feel I need to. And at a certain point, I am going to go in and I'm going to lift this stencil up and take a look to see how it looks. And I'm actually pretty happy with that. So we're just going to lay this back down, anchor it back down, and continue to add down to the bottom here. And I am going to go all the way to the bottom of this stencil, and then I'm going to reposition it to get that last little bit. And I'm just looking for areas that I think might be a little bit light before I move the stencil. If you're really good about where light shadows are, you can play around with the dark and light. If you know the sun is coming from a particular direction, you can certainly play around with that. That's not something I have. I'm not an artist. I haven't played with that very much, so I don't have a lot of skill in that. So I'm not really worried about it. Okay, so now we're going to lift the stencil up. Make sure that our piece of paper isn't going to go anywhere. And then we're going to shift it down. And I'm going to be looking at where I can make the most natural transition from that line and see if I can match any of this up in a way that will make it not look too much like I have a line down there at the bottom. And this is going to be the hardest part, I think. So if I look at it like that, again, I'm just playing around, just seeing. Okay. So if I do, let's see. I think I'm going to come down a little bit further. Not liking any of that transition here. I'm going to rotate the stencil and see if that helps me any. All right. So that's the original way I had it. And if I go upside down and flip it over. Okay, so I'm going to clean off my stencil and I'm going to flip it over because I think that's going to give me the best solution for this. Okay, so what I did is I cleaned off my stencil because what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually flip this over. And I'm going to flip this over because I think that's going to give me the right orientation to do these flowers and to mirror that bottom half a little bit closer to what was on the top and hopefully kind of remove that line that I have. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky because I've got half the stencil or more than half the stencil off of the edge of my desk. And so I'm going to have to be really careful about what I'm doing here. So I've cleaned off my stencil. I've flipped it to the opposite side. And now I've put it down on my page to try and get this last little bit at the bottom of the page stenciled in. Again, making sure that my tape stays down. I'm holding the stencil as well to try and make sure it doesn't move too much. And then anything that I don't like, I'm going to cover up with journaling or with an embellishment. So yeah, I've got a little bit of an extra line here. I went a little bit high on the edge. So I'm going to do something to cover that up. But I think I can place a photo, or I can place a journaling block over that and hide that. All right, so that was the left side. We're going to go ahead and do the right side. Very similar process. We're going to lay the stencil down. This time, I think I'm going to be a little bit more careful about where I stop and where I start. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop down here and then shift it, so I don't have these partial pieces that are on the edge there. So we're going to give that a try. So I've come off of the page here. So the stencil is off of the page on the right hand side, and I'm going to stop stenciling somewhere right in this area. I'm going to get these flowers and leaves, and then I'm going to shift the stencil. So that way I can get, I can maybe make it a little bit easier for me to align it and create a continuous pattern. So sometimes it's just playing around. Other times it's just knowing that you might have an area that you might need to put a journaling box or an embellishment of some sort, or a picture is going to go over it. I'm probably the only one that will notice that there was that little blip at the end there, and that's okay, right? I'm my worst critiquer of my work, and most people are. It's not even going to be something that they even pick up. Okay, so again, I'm trying to be really careful as I get sort of into this area here, because I want to lift this up and move it at this point. Need to add a little bit more color up here. Again, hold your stencil, make sure that it's taped down. All right. And at this point, we're going to do a little shift so that we can get that other one. Just looking at this here, like that. And I'm actually going to get another piece of tape so that I don't accidentally, which is what I should have done on the other piece, I'm going to put another piece of tape directly down on the stencil so that I don't go over that section that I just did and create a double line. So we're going to go ahead, just trying to see the best way to do this. I think at an angle. And we'll pick it up and we'll take a look at it and just make sure we don't have any gaps. So I'm going to just start down here at the end. And again, just trying to create some lights and darks. Tape does not want to stick for me today. All right. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and lift this up and just take a look at it. And I see a little gap right in here. So we're just going to move my tape a little bit, and we're going to hit these areas right here lightly, and a little bit darker there. I don't want to blend that little dark spot a little bit that's on those leaves. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. Now I'm going to have a strip that's going to go across here anyway. So again, it's not going to be too noticeable where that little transition is, because I'm going to have a nice strip that's going to go here, and most people aren't going to notice that. All right, so with that, we are done with creating the stenciling that's going to go both on the left and the right hand side. And when I come back, we'll look at doing the stamping, and then we will talk through the assembly of these 2 pages. So let's do the stamping that we need for this layout. So this 3x3 piece of White Daisy needs to get stamped, and it's going to get stamped in toffee and in Lagoon. Those are the 2 colors. We are going to be using the heart stamp. We're going to be using, I left an imprint on, you left an imprint on my heart, and then we're using the filigree one as well. The stamp itself is sort of staged. So the sentiment is at the top, then the heart, and then the filigree is down in the corner over here. So the first thing that I'm going to stamp is the sentiment at the top. So everything's going to be around that. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this sentiment. Again, if it hasn't been used, you want to season it up. You're going to ink it up in the Lagoon. I'm going to stamp it off and just see if I'm getting a clear stamp. Looks like I've got a little bit of gunk on it, so we'll clean that up just using my scissors there. We'll do that one more time, just see if we're going to get a clean stamp this time. That looks good. And again, I've got my paper on top of my foam, and see if I can get that straight. And then very close to the top of this piece of paper, I'm going to stamp our sentiment. I'm going to give it a second to let the ink soak in. It is a solid stamp, so you want to make sure you give it a good press. And I'm going to lift up pretty good. All right, so we're done with that sentiment. Then we're going to take the heart, and you could do this 2 ways. You could stamp this and cut it out, and then cut out a mask to put on top of the heart. I'm going to go ahead and try this without doing that. So the filigree, we're going to be stamping off of the edge. So again, I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath this so that I don't get my foam messed up. And I'm going to give this a go. So season my stamp, and I'm going to tap it into my Lagoon ink. And we're going to stamp this off the edge of the paper. We're going to leave a gap between where the heart is going to be and where this filigree is, what we're stamping off. But we want a little white edge. So we're just going to stamp. I'm going to press because I do have it kind of at an angle, and we're going to lift it off. We don't want to move that heart, but we have to do the other side. So we're going to ink this up again, and we're going to do the same thing, just like that. And lift that up, and that's got a pretty good impression. Okay, so then the last thing we need to do is we need to do the heart. So we're going to put the heart on the block, and the heart's going to be in toffee. So we're going to grab our toffee. We're going to season up this stamp. Now this one we are going to stamp off because this is a big stamp. So we're going to ink it up. We're going to stamp off. Just see if we got good ink coverage. We do. Re-ink it again. Take a look. Just make sure it looks good. And then we're going to place it in between those 2 filigree pieces and hopefully in the middle. Try and just make sure I'm straight like that. And again, even pressure across this because it's a solid stamp. So we want to make sure that we get a good pressure so the ink transfers, and we give time for that ink to transfer. And there you go. You've got that piece all set. Okay, so our next piece is to do some assembly. So come on back and we'll do some assembly next. All right, so now I have come back and I have done a dry fit of this layout with my changes. So obviously I didn't use the limeade on the layouts. I did the stenciling in the limeade, but not the limeade cardstock. But I did want to do a bit of a transition between the line of the stenciling that we created and the rest of the layout. So I cut a 1/4 inch strip of limeade, and I'm using the dark side of the limeade. And then everything else I've sort of just done some dry fitting on. And when I laid it out, I found that not Sundance, the shortbread cardstock was really not popping off the page. It looked very, it just was hard to see. And so I decided that I was going to do some of the blending brush, or not the blending brush, but the foam brush and the toffee ink again. And I decided to go ahead and go around the edges of all of these shortbread pieces with the toffee ink. And we're using the light side of the shortbread, and just give it some definition. This is just going to create some shadow or some definition between this piece and the white daisy background. It pops off much better when I did that. And the same situation was with this piece of the pattern paper, where I just felt it was the shortbread on the shortbread, it just was not showing up very well. And so I decided this also needed to get a bit of treatment with the toffee ink around the edges of the paper. And this then will allow both pieces to get to really be defined on the page a little bit better and have some presence on the page. Not too much, just enough that you realize that there is two pieces of paper there. The other thing that I did on the stamped piece that we did is I did the same thing. Laid the white down on the shortbread piece. It just was not enough for me. It was okay, but I decided I wanted to add again an edge to that of the toffee, of the toffee ink. And again, on the shortbread pieces that are on the mats for these other pieces, I also did that treatment. The other thing that I'm going to do a treatment on is on the frame here that is part of the embellishments that we're going to do. And again, this is something that we did on the other layouts, is I'm going to just go in with my foam daubers, and I'm going to just create a little bit of highlights, or low lights in this case because it's darker, on this frame, just so that, again, I give some definition of it while it's laying down on this. So that was some of the additional coloring that I did. I also did it on this sticker here. The edges of the sticker I did with toffee ink as well. The other thing that I did on the right-hand side is I added another 1/4 inch strip of the lagoon to match, similar to what I did on the left-hand side. And the reason I did that is when this was just sitting on that stenciled piece, it's okay, but I just felt like it just needed a little bit more defining, and I really like the idea of pulling in the lagoon. I tried it with the limeade, and it was okay. It just, I don't know, I didn't like it as much as I liked it with the lagoon. So I decided that I'd just do the 1/4 inch strip of limeade on the left, and then the 1/4 inch strips of lagoon on the right. And I think there's enough limeade and lagoon crossing the pages that that's not a problem. So the only other change that I made to this is I added another photo on the left-hand side. The original layout had a singular 4x6 photo and then 2 blocks of lagoon paper that had journaling strips on it, and that I wasn't liking the way that looked when I did a layout. or a dry layout, a dry run of it. And so I decided that I would instead add another 3x4 photo here on the left-hand side. I think I'm much happier with that. So at this point, now that I've done the dry fitting of the layout, again, just with some of those minor tweaks, I'm going to go ahead and adhere everything down. All right, so I decided as I was putting this together that it might be helpful for me to do the left side on camera because this one is a little bit more complicated or has a little bit more work that needs to be done to get it all aligned. So the left side is pretty straightforward. You're putting the strips down, you're aligning all of these boxes, and you're laying down your pictures. So really not that difficult. The only thing is, you've got this extra embellishment with this stamp or this postage stamp type frame. And we're going to put some sentiments on top of that. But that's really straightforward. But on this side, we have a bunch of pieces that we're working with. We're working with this toffee paper. We're working with the stripe. We've got these small pieces here. And then we've got each of these little individual pieces that go down in the bottom left-hand side of the page. So I thought, let's go ahead and put this together. All right, so I've got obviously my stenciled piece up here, and the next piece I need to lay down is this toffee patterned paper. And up here at the left is we have those birds. We're not going to really see those birds once we finish laying this out, but I'm going to go ahead and start with this piece as my first piece that I'm going to lay down, because this is going to orient the other pieces that are going to go on this layout. And so I'm just lining this up along the edge here on the right and then along the bottom. Then from there, I can start doing some placements. I can start with, I'm going to leave those two off to the side, but I've got the placement of these pieces. Actually, this one goes down here, this one goes up here, and then I've got the placement of the bigger squares. So the next piece that I want to put down is I want to put down this piece that is the 3 layers. It's got the pattern paper, the shortbread, and then the photo placeholder, because I want that on the lower part and right up against the patterned shortbread paper here. So I'm going to get that aligned with the bottom and butted right up against that shortbread. And the reason I want to do that is because then that's going to allow me to place the sentiment piece in the right spot on the from that location. So this piece I want to have up against the left-hand side, but I want these corners down here to be aligned, right? I want these corners not to be offset. And so by putting this piece down first, it allows me to place this second piece, its companion piece, up against this left-hand side, but high enough where it's going to create that nice grid look. Then I can apply the other 2 squares in this grid. And these are going to have white borders, so I'm just wanting to try and get a very even reveal for that white. And I'm going to put that piece down. And then we'll put down this piece. And this piece is going to overlap the stencil a little bit because of the way I did that. And I'm just trying to make sure that my reveal is even on the bottom and on the left and right. All right, so now that I've done that, I can then put on my title piece here at the top and where I want to have that placed. So again, I'm going to just dry lay this out one more time where I think I want it. And I'm going to put these 2 photo placeholders down to see if I'm okay with that placement. And that's looking pretty good. So now that I have that placement down, I'm going to go ahead and just take my pencil and I'm going to just do a little mark kind of on the sides there so that I know where I want this piece to go when it goes back in. So again, I'm just going to add my adhesive and then I'm going to come in and add my striped piece in. Again, if I had my Versamat out, this would make sure that I actually had this aligned correctly, but that's looking pretty straight to me. And then I'm going to put on my my Lagoon 1/4 inch strip. Again, I'm doing the adhesive while it's on my all-purpose mat here so that I can easily clean up after I'm done. So we're just going to align that on the bottom, butting it right up against that piece. And then we'll do the same thing for the top one. So it's not that complicated to assemble, but there was a sequence that I felt like made it easier to assemble by starting with that lower left-hand piece and then working your way across and then up this layout. All right, so now that we've got that, we're going to go ahead and add our picture placeholders. These are overlapping each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the first one down, and then I'm going to make sure I do not put adhesive where the overlap is going to happen, which is down in this lower corner. So I can put adhesive up at this upper corner, but the lower corner I want to make sure I do not put any adhesive on because I need to be able to slide my picture in when I have it. So I want to just be careful. So I'm just getting this so that that's got that nice overlap. And as you can tell, we're not going to see those birds at all that were on this piece of patterned paper. All right, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a embellishment or a piece just there to the left. And I had a couple of choices that I could go with. One of the choices was to use this sticker. My other choice was to use the zip strip that had the words on it. So I'm actually going to put the title on first before I do this so that I can see if this is too busy. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not sure I want to use the words, that I might want to just use the pattern. So we're just going to put that down. So again, this was from the sticker sheet. And I can go ahead and just put that down like that, and I can see if I like that. My other thought was to put perfect day down. And looking at it now that I've got the layout together, I don't think that really works. This happened, again, I think because we have so many words already happening on this particular sheet that it probably isn't a good idea to add any more kind of in this little grouping. The other option is another zip strip that is part of one of the other papers, and I think it conflicts too much with the Troyfoil pattern here on the left. This one I think is a little bit more complementary as far as how it looks. It just feels like it's a little bit heavy with the amount of Lagoon, so I'm just not sure I'm even going to do this. My last option that I was thinking of was this strip of paper that I had left as well. And again, I don't think that really works. So again, some of this is just trial and error, right? Some of this is just looking at it and saying, okay, do you think that this works? And placing things down and saying, I like that, I don't like that. And you may love it, right? You may take a look at it and you may say, oh, that looks great to me. And that's great. Then do it, right? There is no one who's going to tell you that this is not the way it should be, right? So all I'm doing is just playing around with some of the scraps and seeing if there's anything there that I like that is complementary, that kind of matches what was part of the workshop. But no one's going to know if it's not there, that there should have been something there, right? And so, if you leave it off, then great. That works for you. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't think that this little piece would work, but I actually think this piece works the best. It ties in the paper here on the right. It ties in the shortbread here on the left, and it happens to be the perfect size. So we're going to go with that. And as you can see, I just played around by putting things underneath just to see if I liked it. And I'm just sliding that underneath my piece. And now I've got a little bit of balance and, creating some interest right there to the left of the photo. All right, so the last thing that we need to add for both of these layouts is the journaling strips. And we're going to use, again, the lines that are part of this paper. And we're going to go ahead and do another cut here. We're going to just offset this slightly. And you can put as many journaling lines or as many of these journaling strips as you like down, right? This is up to you how much story you might have to tell. Do you have a lot of story that you usually tell, or do you tell little stories? So now we've got our journaling lines on the left-hand side. All right, so the last thing that we need to do is we need to add just a few of our embellishments. So we're going to come back to our dots. In this case, we could go to our wood grain as well. And I'm actually going to look at that and see if there's any wood grain. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a medium heart down here. And I'm going to add a large and a medium heart up here. So now I've got 3. And then I'm going to, again, just look at these flowers and just see if there's one that kind of speaks to me. Maybe to go over here. Thinking maybe something like that. And this I did not plan out as well because I wasn't sure what I was going to do there. So maybe doing something like that. I like that. Okay, we're going to go ahead, see if we have any ink left on this. Again, I'm just afraid it's going to kind of be in the shadows if I don't give it a little bit of dimension. So we'll go ahead and adhere that down. And that one. Yep, I think that's good. All right, so that's the left side. That's everything that we needed to do on the left side. On the right side, we have just a couple of things that we're going to add to the right side. We're going to add our sentiments across this box. And I did want to kind of bring that up so that you could see it a little bit more. Hopefully that came through, that you could see that. And so we're just going to add our sentiments. And I'm going to just double check that I'm not overlapping my photo too much. So I feel like I've got adhesive there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some of that foam adhesive so that I'm not having a problem when I go to lay my photos down. And then Simple Joys right underneath that, like that. All right. And then at this point, these 2 layouts are done. So again, a little bit different, but again, in the same feel and style, I think, as the intent of the original layouts were. And I really am actually quite happy with my version of this. and hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, please feel free to hit the like button. I always like to see what people like. And feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see me create more layouts in the future and get notifications that I've posted something up on YouTube. I do have enough scraps left that I probably can get a fourth layout out of this, so I'm going to be playing around with that. So please feel free to come back and see what I come up with the scraps to try to use up the rest of these papers. All right, have a great day, and I'll see you on the next video.